Oh, I love that. That is so me, especially the duct tape part of it. Good to see you guys this morning. You look a whole lot warmer. I was watching some of you come in the doors this morning. You look a little warmer now that you've been in the cozy confines of the auditorium this morning. Welcome to our series Do-Over. How many of you would say that you are directions and instructions adverse? In other words, some of you will admit that, but for me, it's not that I'm against instructions. I just look at it and think, hey, I can put that thing together. Hey, I can do it. And that's what sometimes gets me into trouble, I mean, after all, directions are for people who just want to get it right the first time, Directions are for people who have never experienced the joy of reassembling things, Directions are for those people who just, don't really want to go and have the adventure of starting and doing something over again, right? I don't know how many of you have had this experience. I'm sure many of you have. Christmas Eve. Now, for our family, Christmas Eve meant for the last 30, 40 years has meant coming to church and doing a Christmas Eve service, sometimes two of them, going back home. Oftentimes we had family here. They would... if it was just one service, we'd have something in between the services. They would head back. After the second service, I'd get back home, and there was still some assembling to do, And, sun's coming up, and you get to this just get her done type of thing in your life. And so consequently, there have been times when there's been things under the tree that, you assemble them together, your daughters come out, and you go, hey, I want to show you your new Barbie house. I know that your friends' Barbie houses have roofs on them, but this is construction zone Barbie, all right? And she doesn't, you don't want to say, hey, honey, I ripped up your roof when I was trying to take it apart. You don't want to say those things, right? Or my gas grill, a couple of gas grill type of experiences where I've gone to Lowe's, bought a new gas grill, bring it home, and let me just say this, okay? If they've got one already assembled, like in the out front, borrow a friend's pickup and put it in the back of the pickup and take it home. Don't go through the experience of having to put it together and say to your wife, honey, I know it says a gas grill, but we're old school, all right? I don't want to connect anything gas to this thing. We'll just put charcoal in the bottom of it and do it. These do-over type of experiences are sometimes kind of funny, sometimes not so funny, but we've all had the experience of putting something together and then having to take it apart and doing it over. And it's no big deal when it's a gas grill. It's a little bigger deal when it's the Barbie house, or Legos or something like that. That's not so bad. But if it's your life, it's a little bit bigger deal. So the title of this series, kind of the subtitle of Do-Over, is the whole idea of how to make next time different than the time before, all right? And if you've just gotten out of a relationship and you're thinking about another relationship, a do-over, how can you make sure next time will be different than the last time, You just lost your job, or you flunked out of school, or, hundreds of different scenarios that you might have in your life, and as you look at it, you say, well, losing my job wasn't really my fault just because I didn't show up on time or something like that. It's not all my fault. And when we assess blame, don't we always say, it really wasn't my fault, it was somebody else's fault, right? It's partly our fault, partly their fault, but mostly it's their fault. Don't we say that? Isn't it true? It's mostly other people's fault. Can I get an amen on that? Yeah. It's always somebody else's fault, isn't it? I flunked out, and it was because of the teacher, It's not really your fault. That relationship that didn't work out again and again and again, well, it's not really my fault. But these do-over things do get to come out of it. Now, here's the reason I'm excited about this morning. The reason I'm excited about this whole series is this. I've had kind of a front row seat to see lots and lots of people through the years make mistakes over things lots and lots of times, all right? And I've been front row seat of me seeing myself make mistakes. And there are times when I see people making the same stupid decision over and over and over and over and over again and again and again and again, it breaks my heart. I got to tell you, sometimes it just breaks my heart. And we've all had that experience, but I got to tell you, when you're a pastor, you see it so much of the time that you just at times want to go, hey, let's have a universal timeout, all right? Okay, can we all just stop a minute? Because there's some basic things that if we would all do them, the next time would definitely be different and better than the last time. And here's one of the things that's interesting that I've noticed down through the years is that we learn the most from the things that have the lesser importance, all right? There are things that we do that aren't all that important, and we learn from those mistakes, right? How many of you, when you first started texting, sent out some texts that should have never left your phone? Okay? Remember when my first iPhone, I had some other phone before that, and it had autocorrect on it. It means automatically embarrassed is what it actually means on that, okay? Because it will connect it to words. And I know you had that same experience because I received some of those texts. I didn't know you said such words in your life, you know. And you see that and you send it out, you know, just hit it, the word send, and it goes out. And so we learn from that. Not that it's any really big deal, but we learn from that to read the text one more time before we hit send and send it out, you know. And that's a good thing, you know. But unfortunately, we repeat our mistakes in the areas that matter the most. I mean, in areas of finances, in relationships, things we do with our kids, things we do at work, things we do at school. And after we repeat that same mistake a few times and we suffer the same consequences over and over again, what happens is, I think it happens because I've heard you ask this thing, and I've said the same thing. I've done the same mistake over and over again. I get a do-over, and it's just like the last time. It mirrors the first time. And I say, when will I ever learn, right? Now, here's the key part of that component, okay? It's the word I. When will I ever learn? That's the common denominator in all the stupid mistakes we make, is the word I, all right? We over and over again do the same thing. And for some reason, we don't learn as quick in the areas that matter the most as we do in the areas that matter the least. And so again, for years and years and years and years, I sit around and I watch these things happen. I watch people make mistakes. I mean, I used to do counseling, but nobody listens, so I preach instead. You know, I don't know if it makes any difference, but you give people advice and you think, man, that was really good advice, but they don't do it. Or you say, you know, here's a great book to read. I think it'll give you some insight to what's going on in your life, but they don't want to read it. Or somebody comes to you and they've gone through a situation, circumstances, and they're coming out the other side of it, and you say to them, you know, I have a friend that has gone through something very similar to what you went through, and they may have some things to share with you in the intermediate time. And this guy like, no, I don't really want to do that. So you watch people make unnecessary mistakes and make unnecessary decisions. And my thing is this: life has enough unavoidable pain, you know? You watch people make unnecessarily bad mistakes in their life, bad decisions, but friends, there is a lot of pain that we can avoid. There's some pain we can't avoid. There are things that are just going to go wrong sometimes, right? We live in a fallen world. So why in the world would I add pain, more pain, to an otherwise somewhat painful existence? Why would I want to add more pain? Why in the world do we do this to ourselves? I mean, when I see people make bad decisions financially, relationally, professionally, academically, I got to tell you, it breaks my heart. Because I think, now, some of this could be avoided if they had just, here's the theme of our year, paid attention to some things. And so for the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at things that we need to pay attention to if we want next time to be different than last time. And this morning, I want us to begin by talking about 3 myths, all right? And I've got to tell you, when you hear these things, when we go through each one of these myths, you're going to say, James, you are without a doubt the most brilliant person in the world, okay? You're going to do that. Actually, what you're going to say is, duh, everybody knows that. And it's not a fact that you don't know it. It's just that we buy into some of these myths within our life, all right? And because we buy into them, we make certain assumptions that prompts our decisions, gets our attention turned in the wrong direction, And the result is it influences the direction of our life. So 3 myths to avoid when we're doing a do-over. The first one is this. And we call it this. It's called the experience myth, all right? We have certain assumptions about going through something that is a rotten thing in our life, a bad experience, a bad round one, and we say, I now have experience in this, so I won't do the same thing. And you all know, I mean, there's some things that I've done. Tree and I celebrate our 42nd anniversary this year. And you wouldn't know. I mean, applaud my wife in putting up with me, because I can be very annoying. Don't amen that part. But I have made some mistakes since the first year of our marriage. I could say I've had 42 years of experience, when the reality is, in some ways, I've had 1 year experience 42 times, okay? So experience does not necessarily mean that you're going to be smarter. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be wiser. Experience sometimes just means I'm older, I'm tireder, I'm poorer, I have not achieved some of the goals that I've wanted to have in my life. That may be what it means. And so you do some things and you do them over and over again, and so we think that experience is going to make me wiser. The truth of the matter is, and this is a big deal, is that when we say, I don't want to go down that road again, and yet whenever we come out of a bad round one, we say, I don't want to do it. I'm good to go now. I've learned my lesson. I don't want to repeat that again. And we say, I've decided to do this. But you just need to know that experience alone does not make you wiser. Here's the key. Evaluated experience is what makes you wiser. Whenever you go through something and you're able to evaluate that, you're able to see some things where you may need to pay attention to something different in the midst of it. And so in this series, what we're going to do is I want to hand you some tools to help you and I evaluate our experience. Now, you know this is true. You've watched other people over and over. You've watched friends make the same mistakes over and over and over and over, right? You've seen that happen. And they've not learned anything from the past whatsoever. And yet they have a past, They've not learned anything from their previous experience, but they've had previous experience. And so experience does not guarantee anything, but evaluated experience can be a game changer. Evaluated experience can set you up for success the next time. So we're going to do some evaluating in this series. We're going to give you some tools to be able to do with that. Second myth is this. It's called the know better myth, all right? The know better myth. Since now I've had this experience, I know better, then I will do better. Oh my goodness. How many of you have ever done something that you knew was wrong and you did it anyway? Yeah. How many of you have done something where you said, I know this is probably the right, smart thing to do, but I choose to do the stupid because I really like the stupid. It's going to be different this next time when I do the stupid thing, okay? We do that, right? We know the difference between right and wrong, and just because we've had a bad round one and we say, I know better, that doesn't mean necessarily that I have the ability to exercise the self-control or whatever to choose to do better. We know there's a difference between knowing better, but it does not equal doing better. Now, here's what's important, this. When you think about a do-over, you can think, well, I've had this experience, I'm wiser now, and now that I'm better, I'm sure I will be better. I will do better. There's no guarantee, because in many cases, knowing better does not equal the ability or the power or the self-control to do better. Now, this is going to get me in trouble, okay? I'll just say it right out, okay? First service, I automatically saw people cross their arms, and so I'm okay with you crossing your arms on this, all right? Because I want to venture into your comfort zone for a minute. This is why many of you, your last bad relationship reflects your current bad relationship. And it's going to continue into the next bad relationship. And you keep thinking, what is wrong with all these people that I'm dating? Nervous laughter. This is important. knowing better doesn't mean you'll do better. Knowing better doesn't mean you have the strength or the power or the self-control to do better. Those are two completely different things. And in order to make sure next time is different than the last time, you have to know that you have to ask yourself the question, okay, if that is the case, now that I know better, what must I do before next time to ensure that I'll actually do better? The know better myth. Third myth is this. This is the clincher. It's called the time myth. All right? The time myth. And we say this, time's against me. The clock's ticking. I'm not getting any younger. That's right. I'm not getting any younger. The opportunities are coming and going. This ship is about to sail. Oh no, what am I going to do? And we say, I've got to get on with this situation. Time's wasting. I've learned my lesson. I know better. And so I won't do that again because clock's ticking. I've got to get on that ship real quick before it leaves the dock. Absolutely false. Over the holidays, I was reading an article on second marriages. And it was by a couple, and they were saying that there's specific things that happen in a second marriage that are more difficult than really even the first marriage. And the second marriages are generally more challenging because quite often you're blending families together. You've got kids or maybe grandkids that you've got to blend together. That makes it more complex. If you're going into a second marriage and you're still in a court battle in the first marriage, that can be very complex. And one of the writers of this article said, we always tell individuals who are considering a second marriage, time is your friend. It's not your enemy. Time is your friend. Now, you and I feel the opposite. We feel the clock ticking, don't we? We see the hourglass with the sand slipping down that way. And anyone that's been in that situation will tell you that yes, you may feel the loneliness. Yes, you may feel like I've got to have somebody else in my life. And they will say to you, no. Don't do that. I understand the rush. I understand the loneliness. I understand the what if he and the what if she, and this may be the last ship to come into my harbor. But time is your friend. And that is true of just about every kind of transition from the first time to the second time, or the third time, or the fourth time. It's true in every time, and in every arena of a do-over, time is your friend. Now here's why. Okay? Once again, I know I'm going to get some arms crossed. It's okay. All right? Because when you've gone through something difficult, either because of the decision you've made or a decision somebody else has made about you, but there's been some hard things that you've had to go through. There's been a lot of difficulty that you've had to go through. When you come through that, you're out of balance. You're not walking right. It's hard to walk on the balance beam. And before you make another big life decision, you need to find some balance in your life. Emotions are like a temperature. They go up, they come down. But oftentimes they don't come down as fast as they go up when you're angry, all right? You're carrying anger, you're carrying resentment, you're carrying stuff you don't even know about. You don't even realize that you're carrying that anger with you. And so consequently, you're off balance. Your emotions are a little too high. You're still dealing with some of the pain. And when your physical temperature goes up, what happens? There's something wrong with your body. And so you kind of fold in on that. You lose your equilibrium. When your emotional temperature goes up, it's because there's something wrong also. And especially if it stays up there. And here's the thing. When you're in pain, whether it's physically or emotional, when you're in pain, you become a little more self-absorbed. We don't like that. That's true. If you're a person that has migraines, you understand the power of pain in your life, and you close things down. You just want to be in a dark room. Somebody comes in, and they just want to say, "Are you okay, honey? Get out of the room!" Right? You're a little bit, and your emotions go high because the pain is high in it, and you become self-absorbed because you're trying to protect yourself, and you just want to be kind of in a dark corner. It's not that you don't love or care about that individual around you. You're just in pain, and you become self-absorbed. You've seen this in people's lives. You have friends that have gone through some tough times, and you've gone through with them. Same thing with them. But whenever you meet with them, you know what they want to talk about? That event, that stupid decision they made, that bad relationship. And 3/4 of the conversation keeps going back to that past event over and over and over and over again. So that every time in your conversation with them, it just keeps coming up. Why? They're self-absorbed. Now, they don't realize that they talk 3/4 of the time about their past deal, but that's where their attention is. And attention influences the direction of their conversation. Now, here's my point. Self-absorbed people make self-absorbed decisions. They just do. You do that. I do that. And consequently, jumping into whatever's next before you, if you've not allowed the temperature to come down, if you're not allowed to find your equilibrium before you find your balance, it's a dangerous thing. You will head in the wrong direction. Now, when you're healthy, you have some clarity about your decisions. When you have clarity, you make better decisions. And until you have clarity, you have no business making big decisions. But that takes time. And if you wait long enough, you'll be able to hear things you couldn't hear previously. When you're self-absorbed, you don't want to hear some of those things. You just reject them. And later on, when you've had some time to regain your balance, there are things that you need to hear before you move on, and you can begin to hear them. You can begin to see things about yourself. Time is your friend. Just say to your neighbor right now, because they don't really believe this, all right? Time is your friend. Would you do that to your neighbor? Just help him out just a little bit, all right? Now, some of you are going, I don't want it to be my friend because I want to get on with my life. And that's probably the reason round 2 is going to mirror round 1, and round 45 will mirror round 1 also, because you will not have the time to evaluate that experience. Now, if you are healthy, you make more clear decisions. Now, at this point, you're saying, James, I know what you're saying is true for most people, but if you allow me to come up there on stage and tell my story is so much different than anybody else's story, and my circumstances are different than anybody else's circumstance. And if you could hear my circumstance, then you would know that I need to jump right into this right now. I need to move on. No, time is your friend. And the reason people rush into it is because they're convinced personally that their situation is different. We'll go to the crossing of arms because I know this is what's going to happen. But I hate to tell you this, but this may hurt your feelings. It's okay. I'm your friend anyway. Your circumstances may be unique, but you are not. Your challenges may seem unique, but you are not. And after you've heard enough stories, you'll realize that not even your challenges and not even your circumstances are really all that unique. It's just your version number 2.70 that is, you think is different, but it's actually been lived out thousands of times before. But because you're in the middle of it, and your emotional temperature is high, and you're feeling the pain, and you're absorbed with it, and it's got your attention, and that's influencing the direction of your life, you're not in a good position to make another big decision. God loves you. He really does. We love you most of the time. Your friends, your life group loves you. Your parents are probably trying to love you. Your brother is going, I'm not taking that call. She's just going to tell that same story over and over again. You know? But that's just life. I'm telling you, before you jump in, time is your friend. And if you want the next time to be better than the last time, you need to make sure time's your friend. Now, if you're following me at this point, you're probably wondering, okay, if all these things you say are true, I'm a Christ follower, wouldn't there be some biblical illustrations of that? Yep, there sure are, like thousands of them, okay? The Bible is a great storybook. It's a great instruction book, and it's the stories of people who have done do-overs over and over again. I mean, That's what the idea that's behind needing a Savior, because we've not had a good first round. We need a Savior. We need somebody who's able to forgive our sins, okay? And so there are lots of stories, lots of illustrations of the do-overs. Let me just give you three real quick. One is Moses. If you know about Moses, he was born into his family or his ethnic group that he was born into, the Hebrews, the Jews, the Israelites, whatever you want to call them, or been born into slavery, been in slavery for hundreds and hundreds of years, 400 years, 430 years, time he was born. And so he's born into this, but the Egyptians are killing the Hebrew boys that are born, trying to get rid of them because they're afraid they're going to multiply too much. And his mother puts him into a floating crib, I guess you could say, basket, and puts him in the Nile River. The Egyptian Pharaoh, say king on that, daughter finds him in the river, pulls him out of the river, adopts him, and so he gets the best of the Egyptian education. You got to realize that Egypt at this time is the most powerful nation on earth, all right? Very advanced in their culture. And so he gets the best education, raised in the courtyard, very privileged person, and he realizes, I'm not really an Egyptian. You know, I don't walk like an Egyptian, talk like a, you know. Sorry. I know, I should learn not to do stand-up comedy, shouldn't I? Okay, it's one of those do-overs for me. And he realizes he's not, and so he decides instead what he's going to do is he's going to become the deliverer of his people. And he sees a taskmaster, a slave driver, beating another Hebrew person, and he kills the taskmaster. And God said, well, I'd like for you to be my deliverer. That's just not the way I want it done. And he has to leave Egypt. He's gone. And during an interval time, a time that God imposes on him, God turns him into a different type of leader. He becomes a deliverer. 40 years. 40 years it takes him to remake his character to where he can make better decisions to be able to have the dream that he had in the beginning. That means that maybe at 102, I might get it right. I'm hanging in there for it, all right? David, born in a poor family, sheep herders, lamb herders, goat herders. He is the youngest one of all the boys. Prophet by the name of Samuel comes and says, from your family is going to come the next king of Israel. And they go through all the boys, and prophet keeps saying, no, not this one, not this one, not this one. Finally, the dad goes, well, there's one more, but he's the runt of the bunch, and he's just out watching the sheep right now. Samuel says, go get him. He comes. He anoints him to be the next king of Israel. Now, David does some pretty fantastic feats, but there's still lots to learn in his life. He's still pretty brash. There's things that he needs to learn. And he becomes the palace musician for Saul, who's the king. They get in an argument. Saul keeps trying to kill him. He has to go to the wilderness. He's in the wilderness. It's really hard to tell, probably between 12 to 15 years before he actually becomes king. And during that time period, he waited, and God taught him lesson after lesson after lesson. Maybe the best story of all is Paul, known as Saul beforehand, Apostle Paul, we may know him at. New Testament, maybe one of the best examples, I don't know. Best religious person you would have ever met. He was religious to the core. Best Pharisee that ever lived. He completely devoted his life to God, time to God, and he decided he was going to defend God's honor by getting rid of all those silly Christians. That was round one. And he killed as many of them as he could. But finally, God knocks him off his horse. He disappears for a while, and he reappears after his conversion. He reappears, and even after his conversion, there's a further wait, maybe 3 years in Damascus, before he becomes the famous person we know of him today as the Apostle Paul, the great church planter. And the stories go on and on and on. But there's a part that's in every one of those stories, and that is that experience didn't actually teach him anything until it was evaluated. It took time for them to know better and to understand some things about themselves. Time is your friend. And as I've watched people, hundreds of people through the years navigate do-overs, people who waited, people who allowed God to prepare them what was the next stage in their life, versus people who said, time's wasting, I got to jump in, I've learned my lesson, I know I'll do better. Here's what I've seen. There's always more time in between. That in between takes time than they're comfortable with. And when they get it right, they emerge with this divine sense of, I don't know how else to put it, but of destiny. They come through the other side and they say things like, God is up to something in my life. He can use my past for you in the future. He's got a purpose in my life. And they also come through with it, listen to this, with a deep humility, with an understanding that they are not the greatest gift in the world, that God is God, and they are not. They'll even say things like, and it was tough, round 1 was tough, round 45 was tough, but I wouldn't trade it for anything that I've learned in this in-between times. In this in-between times. I was angry. I was such a victim. I was devastated. But I'm telling you what God has taught me. He's taught me to be dependent upon Him. Now let me tell you, friends, listen very carefully. That is not natural. You will not do that naturally on your own. You will not go in those in-between times of waiting, because that is a hard, difficult time to wait. It's not natural. But here's what I do know, that because of that, when you get a do-over, God will redeem and add value to your past. Instead of you looking back to your past and looking back at those bad decisions you made, thinking, what a complete waste of time, what a complete waste of life, God redeems that and you get a do-over. When we start in anything, I mean, we dream big dreams. You have great ideas of how the future's going to happen in your life. As I mentioned Friday, Tree and I celebrated our 42nd anniversary, and I can remember before we were married, we spent time praying about our marriage. We spent praying about what we wanted God to do. And unfortunately, I've had lots of experiences that I've had to do over and over. What my wife, who loves me after 42 years, will tell you about me is that I'm annoying. You know that because you've heard it when I preach. I'm annoying, right? Okay? And there are things that in our 42 years that weren't always the best. But God redeems those past experiences and He leverages them for the good in some ways. Because if we allow Him, if we submit to Him, we can make round 2 even better. We can pray, God, give me an A in this course. Help me to find the perfect person so I can have a perfect marriage that reflects you. God, help me to have perfect children. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just that there are no perfect marriages and there are no perfect kids. Amen? There's no perfect families. There's no perfect jobs. Life is just messy. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful in some of the things you do. I don't mean that. I mean that when life bumps you, or somebody else bumps you out, or you bump yourself out, if you will allow God to do something between round 45 and the next round, you'll move on to a different phase. You'll move on to a different season of your life with a sense of destiny. And there's a sense of humility in your life, and that is powerful. Now, you may be here this morning and you're not a church person. That's okay. We're glad you're here. I believe that God, in some sense, led you to be here for this particular morning. And I'm going to share with you one verse. That's all we're looking at today. One verse that I just want to peg in your mind. All right? And when I say this verse, you'll have heard of it before. You may not have known the context of it or anything of that nature, but you'll have heard it before. But it is an extremely important verse when we think about do-overs within our life. And it comes from a guy by the name of Paul that we talked about earlier. And having done some of the things that Paul did, I got to tell you, he was so embarrassed he didn't even want to be around Christians. His past was so embarrassing. I mean, if you knew something that killed all of your family and your best friends, would you want to be around them? That was Paul. And he knew that things. There were things that he didn't ever want to come up again in his life, and yet God taught him something about that. He saw God leverage those things and actually use his past to set up for him what he was going to do in the future. So with that in mind, I want us to look at this verse, all right? Leave it on the screen, if you will. He starts off by saying, we know. There's a confidence there in the Apostle Paul. There's something that he knows very, very well. Even though his experience has not always been the greatest, even though he's got things in his past that's very, very embarrassing, he's got some confidence. And friends, I got to tell you this. When you have a bad round one, when you do something really stupid, you lose all your confidence. Isn't that right? I mean, I was thinking about that. There's probably, this is a soft instance, all right? When I was in high school, my sophomore year of high school, it was probably the second or third game that I started as a sophomore playing basketball. And I was so pumped to do it. It was I can't remember now what we called a fan appreciation or chieftain night or something. And the wrestling team and the basketball team both played. The gym is absolutely packed. We're facing the dreaded Sand Springs Sandites. And in those days, you jumped the ball at every quarter, and we didn't have a great first quarter. I'm playing point guard. I'm going and encouraging everybody else. You know, I'm the only underclassman on the court. You know, I'm talking them up, encouraging them. We have the jump ball. It's tipped. I dove for the ball, knocked the guy down, ball squared away. I'm crawling on my hands and knees to get the ball. There's a tie-up. There's kind of almost like a football scrum. The ball comes out. I grab the ball, and I don't know where I am on the court. I just see the goal, and I go up and make a layup for the other team. This is one of my most embarrassing experiences of a basketball player. It may have been the only basket I think I made that night. I'm not certain. And I am just shell-shocked. Coach Rhines, the gym was deafening before that. When I went up for the shot, everything got completely quiet. Coach Rhines yelled, "McCracken! You idiot!" Right. Jerked me from the game, and I had no confidence. I couldn't dribble. I couldn't make a pass. I didn't know what a play was. And I was just out of it. It wasn't for the assistant coach, just working personally with me to try to get my confidence back. I knew nothing. Bad round one. Bad round one. And yet Paul, who had an even worse round one in matters that mean much more than basketball, says, we know. There's a confidence about this. We know. What do we know? We know that in, what's the next two words? How many things? Everything except for making a basket for the wrong team and middle of loyalty night. No. He says in all things. We know this. We have a confidence that this is true. That in all things, even your most shameful moment, even in that thing that you want to hide in the closet and never see the light of day, even in that thing that you think has just absolutely traumatized you, we know that in including your thing, we know that in all things, what's the next two words? Man, am I so glad. Aren't you glad that God works? Even in the midst of your stupidity? I wonder sometimes whether he's at work in the midst of your stupidity. I even wonder if he's working in the midst of my stupidity. But we know that in all things, God works. And it's a good thing because it takes the creator of the universe to make something out of our stupidity in round one to be something good in round 45. Now, if you're willing to take a deep breath, if you're willing to hit the pause button and back off a little bit and decide, hey, just because I had an experience doesn't mean I didn't learn anything, doesn't mean I'll do any better. If you allow him, God will work through and in every segment of your life, including that week of your life that you wish never existed. And what we're going to be talking about in the next 3 weeks is that God, we have the confidence in God that he works in all things. What purpose? For the good of those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. Now here's the deal. You can do something stupid. Now let me rephrase that. You have done something stupid. You're in the process of doing things that are stupid. that you know are wrong. You know they're wrong. But if you say, and you love God with all your heart, you love him, and you're willing to submit to him, you're ready to surrender to him, then he can leverage those bad decisions, those poor round ones, into something different in round 65. He can make the difference. Because God works, I have confidence in this, in all things. God works for the good for those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. Now, this is extremely important to believe and trust God that he can leverage and bring to purpose anything, if you allow him to. But if you rush around and you're arrogant and your love is more for yourself and you're self-absorbed and you don't think there's anything to evaluate, you'll simply have another round that mirrors the last round and the round before that, and you've learned nothing. There'll be nothing for you to leverage. There'll be nothing for you to take into the future. But if you'll trust the Heavenly Father, who loves you and also agrees with you that you made something stupid, and you'll agree with him on that. It's part of confession. Now, what we're going to be talking about over the next 3 weeks is this. Next time can be better than the last time. Not just because I want it to. I don't know of anybody that's had a bad round one that say, I want to do that one again, I don't know of anybody that does that. We always say, I want it to be better. But intention makes no difference. It's where you turn your attention to that will influence the direction that you're going to go. Direction's what's important, not your intention. You can continue to make bad mistakes. You can make bad decisions. You can continue to be self-absorbed. And you can have the best intention. Oh, I'm going to be better. And it will not help. Intention makes no difference. It's where you put your attention and influences the direction in your life. We want to give you some tools over the next 3 weeks. So here's our challenge I'm giving to you, all right? Challenge number 1. In the back, there are on the white tables back there are some memory cards, all right? I talked to you about this last week. I know, every one of you are going to say, I can't memorize. Yes, you can, all right? And these memory cards are just to help you. Go pick one of these up. Our do-over verse for the month is this. 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 40. It says, but they didn't pay any attention. They kept doing what they'd always done. And this is just to get some things in your mind to say, hey, God, I want things to be different. I'm going to pay attention to you. I'm going to get my attention off my self-absorption. I'm going to turn it towards you. All right? First thing. That's the first thing. I want you to commit to that. Second thing is, I want you to commit time. I want you to commit time to turning your attention away from your pain towards God, who can leverage that experience for you. Commit to time. Now, how am I going to say this? Time in gaining understanding. Time in evaluating the experience. Let me give you just real quickly 2 tools that are available for you through our ministries here. One, for those of you who have gone through some tough relationships in your life, you've gone through a divorce, I do not know of anything that is more painful to get over than death. And maybe divorce is worse than death because you still got the guy or the gal giving you trouble later on in life, okay? You still got shared experiences. Go to divorce care, okay? Go through that. Let them help you, give you some tools to evaluate your experience so that you can leverage it. Secondly, one of the best things for every one of us to do, if you've not done so, is to go through where you do a little autopsy on your life. We do this in Celebrate Recovery. It's an opportunity to go through what's called a step study, where you go through and you learn that there's certain things in your life that you just can't seem to break the habit of. You can't get over the hurt of. And so you realize you can't, but you know that God can, so you're going to let him, and you're going to cooperate with him. Part of that cooperation is going through a process, and it takes time. Well, I don't have a time for a year to go to some stupid study. Okay? Then you can continue to make bad mistakes over and over and over and over and over again. Now, it's not going to prevent you from making bad mistakes, but it'll give you some tools to help you do some autopsy and evaluate your experiences. 2 things I want you to commit to. I know, I'm getting this again. Here they are. They're this. Number 1, commit to memorizing. Not a hard one to memorize. I actually memorized it in less than, I'm not going to brag about it, but less than 7 hours. No, I'm kidding. No. But you can memorize this, all right? 2 Kings 17:40. Second, commit to time. Time to learning how to evaluate your experiences. Time to turn your attention away from your pain towards God. And through that, you can leverage, or you can allow God to work in that situation to leverage your experience from your past so that it becomes not something that hangs you in the future, but it becomes something which you can use to help other people in the future. Would you pray with me this morning? Father, I thank you so much, Father, that you're not only the God of second chances, but of the 3rd, 4th, and 45th. And Father, I know that when we quit resisting you and instead surrender to you who created us and know us better than anyone else, Father, then we can begin to deal with those hurts and those habits and those hang-ups in our life that keep us experiencing stupidity over and over again. So, Father, would you please give us the wisdom to know what to do with these experiences. Give us the courage to take those steps, Father. And I ask, Father, that in the next few weeks there will be a whole bunch of us who are willing to push the pause button. Father, I pray that your presence would be right there, that you would begin to complete in us that which you began, and possibly begin through those circumstances that we didn't sign up for, we never want to experience again, Father, to leverage those experiences for the good. So teach us, Father, to trust. Teach us to trust as we wait. And teach us to trust as we get to do do-overs we're thankful for. In Jesus' name we pray.